So welcome to the Sun.
Thank you.
And so we'll give you a few minutes to open up and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And why you're running for Congress, and then we all have some questions, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Hi, my name is Lori Trahan. I'm a Democrat, and I'm running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. I'm running because I want to fight for working families like the one I grew up in here in Lowell. I have deep roots in this community. I grew up, born and raised here in Lowell. Went to public schools my whole life. I was a daughter of a union iron worker, and my mother was a domestic worker while I was growing up. And so I understand the plight of working families right now. I understand that right now Congress isn't going to work. This administration is not going to work for working families of this district, and they deserve better. I plan to go down and be a champion for good paying jobs with benefits, public education that will prepare our children for the world that they're going to inherit, access to affordable, high-quality college education, and health care that covers all of us. I think we're living in a unique moment right now where, as a woman, we feel assaulted by this administration and we need change. I want to go and continue in the footsteps of Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas and fight for women when our voices are not being heard. Third, I think I've got the experience to be effective. I spent 10 years working in a congressional office for Congressman Marty Meehan. I know this district well. I got to serve this district and on his staff, and I've also lived in this district my entire life. I also have worked in private business for the last 12 years, and I think all of that experience, running a congressional office, working in private business, starting my own business, I intend to bring all those skills down to Washington to work for you. And make me and be an effective member for the issues that you care about. This is not a political opportunity for me. I have lived here my entire life. I care deeply about my community. This is a calling for me to work hard for families that I grew up with, people I grew up with, and also the families and the people who my children are growing up with. And I hope you'll consider me when you're voting in September. Thank you.
So having covered, or having gone just to listen to the day after Thanksgiving at the Owl Diner,
Yeah.
you know, that's when I first started hearing.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Your family theme,
Yes.
you know, and representing the families of the district, and you really hit on that today. So can you give us some specific examples of what you would try to do in Congress, or bills that you would sponsor that would help the average working class family? For instance, you said you hit on affordable college.
Yeah.
You know, do you foresee, for instance, free college, as Bernie Sanders once talked about? Just give us some specifics of what you would do for working families of the 3rd, I still want to call it the 5th, of the 3rd district.
No, that's a great question, and you know, there's a few things. Creating an economy where there's economic opportunity and economic security are always going to be first and foremost to me. There's a lot of anxiety around, you know, income, around jobs, around the future that we just have to address. Democrats have to proactively address. It's really tough to think about anything else when you have that anxiety around, you know, where your next paycheck is going to come from. So, you know, on the ground, I'll start here in the district, having a proactive, responsive, accessible office to the business community and to constituents, one that works with state and local government and private enterprise to bring more jobs to this district. You know, I'm happy when I see that this administration and Congress are going to invest in infrastructure projects, because I think those are great opportunities for jobs in this district. You know, I know that the link between, well, what I understand is the link between education and economic mobility. Of course, I support and I will fight for early education, public education, but affordable college education. We need to do more to make college more affordable.
Like what? Like what? Give us an example.
You know, I think we need to, well, let me start here. Going to college is like just tethered to the American dream. I think we need to open up more lanes of education for our young people. I think that we actually have to make those other lanes more noble. There are credit certification programs that we can give through community colleges, through apprenticeship programs, through vocational training that I actually think compete with college and actually get our young people into good paying jobs that are actually going to stay here in this country. And I do think that we need a mindset shift in this country so that we are making noble all of those lanes. We are tying all of those lanes to the American dream. So I would do more to invest in efficient programs that gave us certifications.
At the community college level?
At the community
college level. Similar to what Obama tried to do, right?
At the vocational, yes, at our vocational schools, apprenticeship schools that, labor organizations are trying to put into high schools. I have a lot of people who have supported my campaign who are plumbers, electricians, they're data analysts, they're cybersecurity analysts. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go to college to get those credentials, and those are jobs that we're seeing being created and being retained in this country. So I think that's an important part of closing the income inequality gap. Another thing is health care. It's hard. It's hard to, just like it's hard to overcome the anxiety about not knowing, if your economic future is secure. It's hard to concentrate on anything else if you don't think that you're going to be cared for if you get sick or if your children get sick. We have a good framework in place with the Affordable Care Act, but it's a framework. It needs improvement. It needs iteration. I want to go down. I want to improve that program. I want to strengthen it.
How would you do that? How would you improve it? Would you bring back the mandate? What would you do?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot. I mean, right now, the Affordable Care Act is not affordable for all families. Our wages have not grown to meet the rising premiums, and we have to do more to take those costs out of healthcare. We have to be more innovative on how we work with our health delivery systems to make sure that people can afford those services. People are focused on, prevention and co-producing their own health, so that they're not back in the hospitals in an emergency situation. So I think that I think are a lot of options for strengthening our healthcare system, and I'd like to understand all of them. I'd like to understand the financial viability of them. I'd like to understand, where we've learned. We've had the Affordable Care Act now for years, and I think we've got a lot of lessons that we can bring out, and I think we can improve it. And I think that's where our focus should be, not on repealing and replacing it, but finding ways to make it better.
What do you think about a single-payer system? Growing number of Democrats in Congress are supporting a Medicare for all. Is that something that you're interested in or see as one of these viable options? Or would you rather work within the existing ACA legislation?
Yeah, I would explore all options. I think for me the litmus test is the viability. I mean, the single-payer system is one where, I think ideally and conceptually it sounds wonderful. And it's, I think, for all of those who believe that health care is a right and not a privilege, we would love to see a system like that move forward. There are other costs associated with investing in a single-payer system that I don't think that we fully understand. And when I talk to healthcare administrators, in this district, in Boston, I think that they're nervous of what that will do to the quality of healthcare and to their business model, frankly, of how they deliver care. And so I would look at all the options, and I think there are more. I mean, there are several. It's not just a single-payer option, but there are strong public options to bolster the Affordable Care Act. But I would have to look at each of them, through the lens of their viability and whether we have a sustainable funding mechanism for them.
Follow up, Chris? Or
No,
Kim?
Well, you started a business, okay, so you know you started a couple of businesses, but you know what it's like to go through that process, to start a business,
Yeah.
to grow it, okay? And so, did the latest tax reform bill, did that help your business? Did it hurt your business? Do you think overall, across America, the impact it had on business was good, bad, or it's just too early to really tell? And yet, Democrats and Republicans have been talking about it for decades. It never got done, and now it did get done.
Yes.
And the same sides, you either complain because it was a Republican bill, or you approve it because it was you're a Republican and you like it, or So tell us from you and your business and starting a business. Does this help? Does it hurt?
Yeah. So I'm I don't get to benefit from the corporate tax cut that was delivered in the tax reform package. What the most the disheartening part about the tax reform bill is, you're right, we had an opportunity to deliver major tax reform, which I think both sides really want. I mean, God knows us as taxpayers, we want simplification of the tax code, and we just want it to be right-sized so that folks are paying their share. And we didn't have both sides at the table, and I don't think that that's good public policy. I think we have to find a way, even when we don't agree. But that's when we have the best outcomes, is when we at least have both sides at the table, and not everyone's going to win, and some are going to lose. But you don't have this this name calling and this divisiveness post passing legislation when you incorporate both sides in the beginning. I'm not sure how this is. I've never been a believer in trickle economics. I think many of the conditions that corporations needed to reinvest in higher wages for their employees existed already. I mean, after tax profits were pretty good before we passed tax reform, and we didn't see that. Behavior. I'm not sure we're seeing it now. I think we need to see how it plays out. I can't help feeling that some of the people who are over the long term, who are hardworking families who rely on some of those deductions that were wiped out. I think over the longer term that might create more of a gap in our income equality. And I think that's not the only tool that we can use to close that gap. I mean, certainly tax policy is a helpful one, but I think what I would be focused on is going down and using education and finding ways to bolster our economy and create jobs where we can actually lift folks who don't feel like they're getting a fair shake.
Just keeping on tax reform just for a second. So you would have voted against the package?
Yeah.
You would have. Okay. Tom?
Yeah, Lori, you've talked about a couple of things so far, college education, some sort of, reform helping people on medical care. Money has to come from someplace.
Yeah.
Okay? Where does that money now come from if you're expanding or adding programs? And as part of that, I'd like to hear what you would cut in government. Not a tax break or a loophole, but what's government doing now that it shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one where when you're a candidate running for the first time, you actually don't have maybe all the data to answer that question with all the accuracy that I would like to. I do think that we. I think that there are partnerships that the government can strike. When I talk about opening up new lanes of education, whether that's with college institutions, community colleges, apprenticeships or vocational training. I think that we could actually find partnerships with businesses, with labor unions who want to remain viable in this country, in this economy. And we can fund programs that actually get people into jobs faster. This notion that we all go to a four-year college, when those colleges right now are saddling our young people with debt, I think we need to explore other lanes and other programs and getting people faster into jobs that will, support their family and that they can count on in the future. And I don't think that that's I don't think that's a government handout. I don't think that that's well, it may require, some government funding. I think that because it benefits our industry and our economy, and because it will benefit the hardworking, I think that there are partnerships that we can forge in this country that we don't. Because we're a little too partisan, a little too divisive about what players we bring to the table to work on those types of things.
Follow up? Okay. So let's hit on your tenure with Marty Meehan for a while. You were part of a congressional operation there that I covered, and it was very successful in some ways,
Yeah.
and helped led to some passage of some significant legislation. How do you see yourself carrying on the legacy that Marty left in Congress, or do you see yourself breaking completely from that? And then I've got a follow-up to that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for the warning, Bill. Look, when you grew up in Lowell, like I did, you go back to even before Marty. I go back to Congressman Paul Tsongas. And I remember the call to economic arms. I remember him saying things like, you can't be pro-employment and anti-business at the same time. I remember how hands-on he was in the economic development for this city, and how he knew the levers that he had at his disposal to, create a vibrant regional economy. I think Marty absolutely carried on that tradition. He was a progressive Democrat like Congressman Paul Tsongas, who understood that equality and solidarity were important ideals, but he also knew how to roll up his sleeves and work with businesses and work with state and local government, no matter what side of the aisle. And I got to see that firsthand in Washington. When we passed bipartisan campaign finance reform, it took us many Congresses to do that, but we went back at it each time. And we didn't get to pass the bill that we originally co-authored. I mean, it was very different when we finally got it through with Representative Shays and Senators Feingold and McCain. But that's how you do it. That's how you chip away, and that's how you work, and you build consensus and find common ground. And so, I hope to be a leader in Congress, much from that, someone who looks to find sensible people to work with to solve problems. I mean, that's what I do today in business, and that's what I hope to do down there. And one thing that folks forget, and I think Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, has built upon this, and she understood, and I got to see it. I got to see it as a staffer for Marty Meehan, but. The importance of having someone on the Powerful Armed Services Committee, and how important that is for this district, and how important that is for this state. I think in 2015, we benefited from $12 billion in appropriations to this industry, and that's money that goes, not only to creating jobs and maintaining jobs in this district and that industry, but also research and development at the university and some other companies who were trying to find dual use for their military programs. So I think that is a rich heritage that I think we want to keep. And so yes, I would say yes. I did like the style of Marty. Was very.
That was in a roundabout way. That's what you were saying. Go ahead.
Apologize for not reading it. Yes. But I think that it dates back farther than Marty Meehan, and I've had the benefit, because I grew up here, to watch it up close.
Marty broke into politics in a number of different areas. For instance, I had in the column last week that he was the mayoral aide to the late Roy Rourke
Yeah.
back at City Hall way back in the day. You've never held political office. You've been close to political office, but you've never held a political office. So I'm sure the question will be asked during debates. How do you respond to someone who might say that you lack political experience to go to Washington and represent the 3rd Congressional District?
Yeah. So I believe my professional experience, my own accomplishments, can stand up to anybody in this field of candidates. I do have unique experience. One, I think what makes me a great candidate is that I'm from here. I'm deeply rooted in this community.
You should elaborate on that. Go ahead.
I've lived here my entire life. I think that when you ask to represent someone, you need to know them. You need to know their family. You need to know their dreams, their fears, their concerns, their anxieties. And I know the people of this district, and I know the issues that they care about. Some people are moving into this district because they see a political opportunity, and that's not what this is for me. I mean, this is a calling. This is a calling for me to fight for the people I grew up with, and to, frankly, fight for the people who my children are growing up with. And that's what compels me to run. Two, I think one thing that you're seeing across this country, you're seeing women run for office across this country. They're fed up. When Congress doesn't work, we feel it in a disproportionate way. We are the stewards of education. We are the advocates for our kids in our public schools. We're the ones sitting down, planning the college tour visits and the price of college. And I also know how to roll up my sleeves and work with people who might not see eye to eye to me to find common ground. So I think those are better credentials than, just having served in office.
Okay.
Lori, you say, women are fed up across the country, and a lot of them are running for office, are Democrats.
Yeah.
Now, and it's because they're fed up with the Democratic Party, as well as what's going on in Congress.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were elected, would you be a Seth Moulton Democrat who's he's looked upon as a maverick, but he's actually going out and campaigning and raising money for Democrats who he sees will challenge the status quo from the older regime head by Nancy Pelosi, which some Democrats think is an immovable object that is holding back this compromise that you talk about between Democrats and Republicans. I mean, let's face it, the Democrats ran through the health care bill that is bankrupting states, okay? And it might need tweaked. Maybe we're against replace and repeal and stuff, but that is the thinking that is permeating in Washington, that the widening gap, the polarization, okay, and that it's going to take both Republicans and Democrats to heal these wounds and bring them together. So if you're elected, where do you stand? Are you a Moulton Democrat? Are you a status quo Democrat that, let's just keep the same thing going the way it's always been going? We'll be an opposition party. Just let the Republicans whirl when they're in the minority, and we won't get anything done. We'll just tie everything up in gridlock. So,
there was so much of what you just said that I agree with.
Was there a question in there?
I didn't. No, I heard the question. I've been critical of my party. It's hard to sort of even say that it's a statistic that the average age of the leadership in the House is 77. We have done a poor job of succession planning in our party. We're feeling it right now. And I don't subscribe to sitting at the polls of either party and shouting and digging in and not getting things done because we'd rather cast blame in an election year. I mean, that breeds cynicism in voters. That breeds cynicism in me. And it's not why I'm going down there. I'm not going down there to be a part of that. I do think that there are some rising stars in the House and in the Senate, and I think that, you know, when we, whether we take back the House or when we're just voting for leadership, we need to consider, you know, the future of our party, because there are plenty of people who want to transform our party for the future, and I am part of that movement.
Just elaborate a little more on you mentioned that you get up in the morning and sometimes you feel assaulted as a woman by this administration, okay? And attacked, no, she used the word assaulted too. She used the word assaulted. And just explain that. I mean, some people think that, I mean, how do you create a national debate about something unless the media is bringing it to the attention? And I've just been watching documentaries about President Clinton when he was, you know, impeached, okay, for having an affair right in the White House. And women didn't feel assaulted or attacked then, but all of a sudden, there's a Republican in the White House who defeated a candidate who probably should have been president, but she ran such a terrible campaign, and everybody feels assaulted. I mean, you were in Congress as Marty's chief of staff when Clinton was impeached.
Yeah, you know,
I mean, what's the difference? What's the different standard now?
Yeah. So that's a two-part question, and I don't want to forget.
And a lot of women voted for Trump.
Yeah.
He put him in the White House.
So I think we're living in an incredible moment right now. You know, I've never seen in my lifetime so many people come and be willing to speak about, you know, their abuse, their experience. And it has literally got the whole country listening. I mean, we're literally sharing the same breath at this moment. It's never happened in my lifetime. You know, the answer, I think, to that is to hear them, to let them keep talking, hold, you know, individuals and their enablers accountable for those actions. But more importantly, it's to settle for nothing less than real and lasting change. And I'm not sure we had that momentum at any other point in our country. You know, the thing that I find incredible about right now is that the way you actually signal that we are going to change things, that we are not going to have to fight for and protect and defend access to contraception so that we can have control over our financial freedom, right? I mean, there's a reason why we need it. You know, our reproductive rights, affordable daycare, I mean, and certainly equal pay for equal work. The way that you actually make progress on those issues so that we don't have to keep defending it is you just put more women in Congress. You do. You know, I've worked with so many companies who have, you know, they talked about diversity and inclusion, and they take a snapshot of their executive team or their C-suite, and they're depressed because there are no women there. And you know, they think like, oh, is it unconscious bias training? Is it, you know, where in the journey do we lose women? You know, the best signal that you can send people that you're serious about having women in leadership positions and having women part of the discussion so that we arrive at better decisions is to put them there. And I think that's what Congress lacks. I don't think we need, you know, we're 51% of the population. We're 19% of the House of Representatives. I mean, this is the people's house. It needs to be more representative of the demographics of this country.
Chris or Tom? Chris?
No, I'm trying to...
All right, so I mentioned to Campy before you came in that we need to be consistent with all the candidates that come in and ask them about some specific issues that are out there right now. And you're the second person in, so these are some questions that went to the first candidate who was in. You've already addressed tax reform. What about the negotiation in Washington back and forth on DACA and the wall? You know, would you support the wall if you got DACA?
No, the right question is, if you were in the room with the Democrats and Republicans when the president invited them in before the cameras, and he put to them, hey, you guys, I'll sign it. You guys come up with the bill. I'm challenging you right now, okay? You guys work it out. I'll sign the bill. But he insisted that he wanted his wall. Okay, he wanted $18 billion. And now, the question that we put to the other candidate is that, you know, okay, so you're in that room. You get a chance to make a historic deal there, over $18 billion that the national debt says we blow every minute, okay? So, would have you worked out a deal, and what would it have been right there? And would you say, okay, if the 800,000 dreamers mean so much to everybody in this country, particularly Democrats, was that worth making a deal right there at the table?
So I think the Dreamers do mean a lot to people in this country. I think the Dreamers have plenty of, the protection of Dreamers has plenty of bipartisan support already, that it didn't need to be a pawn in a deal. So no, I wouldn't have made the deal. And I'll tell you why. That is not negotiating for a deal. That's compromising the values of our country. So look, I am not interested in fulfilling an irresponsible and a divisive campaign promise on this wall. I always thought the idea was ridiculous. It's basically political grandstanding and ego at its worst. And look, this isn't about a wall, right? This is about border security. So we should not fool ourselves into thinking that we are going to be a safer nation because we have an $18 billion fence. This is crazy. So no, I wouldn't have made that deal. I think it sends a horrible signal to families like the one I grew up in. My parents, you know, my grandparents, excuse me, they came from Brazil and they came from Portugal. And we need to embrace a culture of inclusion. We have to stop with these artifacts that are going to divide our country and to send a signal to the rest of the world that you're not wanted here. I can't get behind it.
So what would have you offered the president? Because now in March, there's going to be mass confusion, chaos, already people upset because it's going to expire, okay, the DACA protections are going to expire, and something's going to happen, good or bad. All right. So, was there anything that you think that you could have offered the president or the Republicans?
Did you read the art of the deal?
No, but I'm saying that there was an opportunity chance. Now it's tied to a spending bill. They're saying that that we're going to shut down the government, and quite frankly, I don't think the president really cares of the president, and that's sad.
This is exactly what's wrong. I mean, imagine that we can't take a clean up or down vote on this bill. Imagine that, like, we can't do
on the DACA bill.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing I saw up close when I was in Washington, there are all these structural impediments to our democracy. They're systemic, right? They are, you know, I mean, we could call them all out. It's the way we draw district lines. It's the way special interest and corporate influence has infiltrated our politics. It's career politicians who propagate a seniority system in Congress. It's parliamentary procedures and rules that no one understands, like Hassard's rule. And the fact that, you know, our electorate wants us to go down there and have a very clean up or down vote. They want to know where we stand on the issues. They don't want everything to be tied to, I had to give this compromise. I mean, why not just have an up or down vote on Dreamers?
It's too simple.
It's, you know what, when did government, why can't government be simple, transparent, and fair? Why?
Well, unfortunately, they'd have to elect 454 Lori Lareros.
Which I think we're going to come close to.
Did you see the story out of Detroit this week where the government deported the guy from Mexico? He's lived in this country for 30 years. He's paid all his taxes,
I don't know.
doesn't even have a speeding ticket. And he's got a wife and 2 kids, full-time job, taking care of his wife and family, and the government shipped him back. So what's your reaction upon hearing something like that?
I want to cry, Chris. I mean, that's what we stand for? Ripping families apart? No, not on my watch.
You know, Nikki Sagas has you know, worked on some good issues below the radar and actually passed several, well, you know, this recent law, the interdict law, but also she got policy change. You know, it seemed like she picked out things that mattered, or at least helped the area. And I go back to the New Balance. She held the Defense Department to the law, the law of the land, which everybody overlooked, the Berry Amendment that was in force. And she got them to buy American, you know, American-made goods for the soldier. It's the law. The Berry Amendment is the law. And because of a loophole, they weren't buying footwear from American makers. So, you know, sometimes, you know, some congressmen want to be up here, congresswomen want to, and it seems like she's done really good by doing some things, protecting Hanscom. Are there any things that stand out in your looking at the district that you might see that you'd like to work on that, you know, doesn't have to be a great thing, you know, big thing that's going to transform the world, but it's going to help us here and really make things work better for the people of Massachusetts and the 3rd Congressional District?
Yeah, a huge part of why I'm going or wanting to go to Washington is because I understand the enormous power of a congressional office in a region, in a district. I think about the 6 working class cities in this district that aren't incredibly dissimilar from Lowell, and they need a congresswoman who can convene, who can continue to convene, you know, the players at the table to help revitalize these communities. You know, state and local government, obviously, but also businesses, attracting businesses to take advantage of our skilled workforce. So I think that there's a lot a congressional office can do to impact these communities and to impact the lives. And I saw that firsthand. I mean, I saw that firsthand when I was working, you know, so in between, there was like this 4 months in between my graduating from college and my starting in Congressman Meehan's office down in Washington. And I was home, and I was the first executive director for the Spindle City Corps, which is still around today. And we worked out of the Lowell Plan Office, and I got to see Paul Songus do the same thing. He'd walk into those Lowell Plan meetings, and they'd work hard to identify how we could do better in this downtown. And that left a lasting impression on me. And so I think that when you think about picking your spots, and I did get to talk to Congresswoman Songus about, you know, how do you work within the constraints of the system, and then how do you take big swings, and when do you, and you have to know the difference about when you can be effective, when the country is ready for you to take a big swing, and when you have to deliver something that's really important. And I've seen that. I've worked in that system, and so I think I'll be very effective at finding my spots to be helpful to this community, to be helpful to businesses who want to locate here, and also to work on some of those big structural impediments that I alluded to, you know, when all those Lori Lareros get down to Congress.
Well, if there's one thing right now, being a mother, a woman, a businesswoman, a candidate, is there anything that where you might land? I mean, Nikki was, you know, she was a military brat, and she had a connection to the military. You talk about education, business. Is there anything that you would like to immerse yourself into in your skills? Anything that stands out?
Yeah. So this doesn't necessarily line up with you know, what I've been doing the last 12 years, but you know, you don't have to go around this district many times to hear about the opioid crisis. You know, the numbers I think are staggering. You know, in 2016, Lowell lost 63 people to overdose deaths. Lawrence lost 46. Haverhill lost 36. You know, those are staggering numbers. That is at our doorstep. It's afflicting all communities, all cities, all towns in this district, and obviously beyond. I think that the federal government needs to step up here. I think we need to, you know, maybe put aside the distraction of talking about marijuana and focus on, you know, the crisis that's on our doorstep, the one that's taking lives, you know, right now. And you know, Massachusetts has done lots of good things. You know, whether it's you know, putting limits on prescriptions, you know, education, investing in treatment facilities and recovery programs. And I think, you know, the federal government needs to step up in a major way, because, you know, we need to see, you know, we may have seen a downward trend in Massachusetts, but it's not enough. You know, we need to eradicate this epidemic, and we need to do it quickly. So as a mother, you know, obviously it's something you just automatically want to fight for when you talk to a Louise Griffin at Zach's house, you know, Tim Grover at Megan's house, Bill Garr at the Lowell house. You know, they're on the front lines right now, and they need help.
Have you ever taken the train from Boston to New York or Boston to Washington?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, when was the last time you took it? Did you take it when you were working for Marty Mann?
I'm sure I did, but I've taken it as, you know, in the last 10 years, like I've commuted.
Do you know that the time that you arrive is within 10 to 15 minutes of when, you know, in the 1990s? It really hasn't gotten any faster.
That is
the fact that, you know, the fact that we don't have,
yes,
okay, a high-speed rail link
yes,
from Boston, or now even in Fitchburg and Gardner, they're talking about expanded rail service,
yes,
which would help as an economic development, big economic development factor. And after, you know, spending some time in France over this past summer, where I could attest to the bullet train,
yes,
and I took it from Bordeaux to Paris, I was absolutely blown away, okay, by how the system works,
yes,
and how we are second rate
we sure are.
in transportation that can greatly help facilitate people who, you know, who don't want to pay for higher, you know, airfares and stuff.
Yeah.
And yet, Massachusetts has been one of the things by, you know, look at the western part of the state. They haven't been able to develop as quickly as the eastern sector, and yet the housing and everything else is getting so costly.
Yeah.
You know, and you would think that, you know, whether you're a congresswoman here or anybody else, you're still looking at the broad picture,
Yeah.
and moving people, getting people around and stuff.
Yeah, no,
So,
I agree. You know,
I guess my question is,
yeah, I think I know.
You
what
just
you're
that would
wanna
help,
get your
but that
just-
would help the district, because now that I've been in Fitchburg, I see it, and that's all people talk about: widening Route 2, transportation, opening up an economic zone,
Yeah.
and yet we're still in the you know, the 19th century.
You know, I agree, and I think spending the time on coming up with a vision and a plan is important. There's no question that you know, those types of investments in public transportation, high-speed rail, those are going to help our economy. They're going to help. They're going to help families who are trying to make ends meet. You know, same with affordable housing. You know, one thing that does make me optimistic is, you know, this administration and this Congress is actually talking about making investments in infrastructure projects finally. I mean, you don't need to drive around too long in Lowell and travel across a couple of those bridges to know that it's badly needed and it's long overdue. And so I think infrastructure projects are a great way to, you know, stimulate the economy, create jobs, and frankly, you know, bring our system up to a place where we ought to be, especially in Massachusetts.
Well, they've been talking about infrastructure now for a year. We haven't seen a peak on that, so.
Any other house cleaning?
No, I think we're
questions that you
good.
have
No, I think we're good. Yeah. You know, I asked Chris, anything else?
No, I think we actually sort of organically hit most of the questions I wanted to raise.
Very good.
How's the campaign going so far? Just
You know, it's going great.
wrap it
Can I
up.
talk a little bit about the campaign?
Yeah,
Is
a
that
few
what
minutes.
you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we're in a good spot. You know, when I got in this in September, you know, I knew the levers that were going to be important. I think the one benefit that I have working for Marty was that there were going to be a lot of surprises. I knew what it would take. So, you know, we finished the year raising $550,000. You know, this last report, we're showing nearly 70% of those donors are from the district, and that's a statistic we're proud of because, you know, when I think about the money that we've raised, the campaign that we've run, it's already a grassroots campaign. You know, we're not buying a grassroots campaign, we've got one. You know, we are out in communities, Lowell, Drake, Chelmsford, Tingsboro, Westford, you know, every day. And, you know, those are communities my family has lived and worked in, you know, for decades. You know, we got early endorsements from state representatives Nangle and Golden and Roddy Mum and City Councilor Rita Mercier, former Mayor Steve Sani, Teamsters Local 25, Ironworkers Local 7. I mean, the reason why those are so important is because those people live and work here. Those are people who care about who the next representative is going to be because they're going to represent them. And that's enormously important to me as we build momentum in this campaign. You know, we know what it takes to win. We're going to raise the money. We're going to be competitive the whole way through. But I don't want this campaign to be about money. I mean, I do get a little annoyed, you know, on these reporting cycles because the focus, you know, inevitably turns to money. But, you know, we are out there. I get unsolicited phone calls and emails from people I know, but then like, people I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. But I think they see themselves in me because I grew up like them, or I'm a mom like them, or I say things that resonate, or they've, you know, and so that's giving me a lot of momentum going into 2018, and so we're thrilled. I think we're going to get, you know, more endorsements as the year goes on, and I'm excited about those. I think we're going to be competitive with the fundraising, and I think we've got a really good message to bring to voters around change and the types of leaders that they want to entrust with that.
How much time are you spending on the western fringe of the district?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I went out to help canvass for Sue Shelf, who in her special election, and yeah, I've gotten out and about there. You know, I have to tell you, you know, one of the reasons why we talk about needing to get the money out of politics is because you do spend an exorbitant amount of time on the phone raising money. So I'd like to spend more time, and you know, we're constantly looking for ways to make our fundraising more efficient so that we can spend more time getting all around the district. But you know, I don't think that there's there might be a handful of communities we haven't been to out west, but you know, it's you know, Haverhill, Lawrence, Methuen, those cities, they were all in the district when I served for Marty Means' office. Marlboro was, Concord, Acton, Boxborough, those southern suburbs, all in the district. And so we've been eager to go down and solidify relationships that are, you know, that I've had for years, and to build upon them, and going out to the western part of the state and, you know, meeting, you know, folks from those 6 new communities. But yeah, that's what it's going to be all about for me, is getting to meet as many voters as I possibly can, and hearing, you know, what their concerns are, what their aspirations are.
Can you clarify something for me on your fundraising figures? Just, I'm looking at the press release you guys sent out, and the subhead of it says Q4 report will show 73% of donations from inside 3rd District. And later down there's a bullet point that says more than half of all donations from the 3rd District. And I think you said 70 just a moment ago. So what is the actual figure on how much of your fourth quarter fundraising is in district?
I believe it's 67% of the donors
Okay.
are from the district, whereas the amount might be what you just referenced.
Okay.
But you know what, I think we'll double check that and let you know.
I just want to make sure I have the language.
I do too.
on that.
You know, it's funny, and I'm not calling you out on this, but you see, you don't want it to be all about money.
Mm.
But yet, you know, when you've issued 2 press releases now on your goal.
Yeah.
You know, the first one after Co did his, and then you came out with another one.
Yeah.
And now we keep getting press releases from the candidates saying that they've raised this much in the last quarter. Despite what you might say about money,
Yeah.
it's all about the money, right?
Uh,
I mean, let's be honest. You know, it's all about the money.
It's
And-
expensive to run a campaign. And it's, you know, it's like doing your push-ups and sit-ups when you're an athlete. You know, you have to do it. I personally don't care about making voters focus on the dollar amount. I think the reason why we issue press releases is to put the attention on where our money's coming from.
Mhm.
And I actually think that is where we should, I've long believed that transparency of contributions is important in this political system, because when it's not transparent and we don't know, it can breed cynicism in, you know, why we're seeing certain messages or why, you know, certain people are winning, or and so I do believe that when our reports are filed on the 31st, you know, we get to see, you know, how our campaigns are being financed. And so I issue a press release because I'm enormously proud of the fact that we've been able to raise so much money from inside this district.
Remember all the press releases we used to get from Marty that, you know, he secured an earmark? You know, and we got those from Saugus early on.
But, you know, look, Congressman Meehan and Congresswoman Saugus have been enormously effective at working within the constraints that they were put upon. And you know what? That's just being effective. They understand the constraints on the system, and they've been able to, you know, work really, really hard to deliver to businesses here and to people, to families in this district. I think that in 2018, some of these constraints can get lifted. I think that the movement is that big. It compels me to want to run. You know, I didn't think about running since I was 5 years old. This wasn't in my game plan. But what makes me optimistic, what makes me enthusiastic, is that I do think some of those constraints are going to be questioned, because we're going to have a lot of new people coming to Washington.
Very good.
So you're predicting a landslide victory in the midterms?
Yeah, not so. I do think that there's a great chance that the Democrats will take back the House, but I think more importantly, I think sensibility is going to return to both parties. I think the people that are going to get elected on the Democratic side and on the Republican side are going to represent leaders who are, you know, fed up with partisan politics, career politicians, and party bosses, frankly. And they're going to go down and try to forge, you know, partnerships where we can actually get things done.